That's the thing too. And like in Kansas in general, we do not, in the legislature, we do not really have a diversity of opinions, regardless of party. Do you know, there's not a lot of diversity of opinions. You have these people's opinion in the minority, and you have these people's opinion in the majority, and there's not a lot of nuance in between. And then the majority obviously is a lot.
Yep.
Here in Kansas is the work that I do. Like I mainly focus on state, right? I mainly focus on the state races, the House in particular. And so my goal is to just bring some balance back to Kansas. And so I think that's the same situation. I'm not saying that Democrats need to take over and we're going to do to you. I want revenge. And so I don't care about revenge. I care about bringing balance back to our country because our country is diverse and because I just saw a comment today on an article where they're talking about all these rural hospitals closing. And
Yep.
something in the comments is they got what they're voted for. And I'm like, they didn't all vote for that, one. And two, I don't think the price you pay for a bad vote should be death.
Yeah. 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 That's a pretty harsh, and you hear that all the time is these people voted for this administration, so they're getting what they deserve. And you've got to have a heart for folks, and you've got to have compassion and realize that some of these folks that voted for the current administration were completely disenfranchised and they felt nobody was listening to them. And so I understand why somebody who's not completely informed would make that decision, frankly. And even some folks that are informed but just feel like they have no voice.
I know what it's like to be on the other side of things and to hold my nose and vote for somebody.
Yeah.
Because I feel they're the lesser of evil, right?
Yeah.
The majority of the times that I have voted for president, that has been the case. And so there's been twice that I have been able to vote for a president that I was like, yes. And one of them was the primary for Bernie, and the other one was Obama, but twice. But otherwise, I've been like, I guess you're better than the other guy. And that's not how I would want somebody voting for me, right? If I was earning someone's vote, I would want them to be like, yes, I support Helen. Not, I guess Helen's not as bad as that other person.
That's the other guy. Exactly.
Yeah.
No, the stark contrast between Mr. Obama and Mr. Trump. I heard Mr. Obama speak recently, and so measured and so thoughtful. When my daughter was born, the only president she knew in her elementary school was President Obama. And so I think that grace, that sense of decency just permeated us. And it's what she came to expect as normal. And now I worry folks born during the previous and the current administration now with Mr. Trump, that lack of decency, that coarseness is now being considered normal. And it's not. That's not normal. And so I worry, particularly folks that are coming of age now, that's all they're going to know. And I have a conversation with my boys who are not that young now all the time, which is, hey, this having a UFC fight on the lawn. I've got a 19-year-old who's a big UFC fan, quite frankly, which I don't completely understand. But having that on the lawn of the White House, there ain't nothing normal about that. And it just degrades it degrades what that stands for. And so we've got some work to do to returning the conversation and the kind of the moral tone of this country. And I think that starts in November.
Yeah, for sure. I think that I had so many thoughts while you were saying all that. First of all, I remember when Reagan wasn't president anymore because he was the only president I had known. I was born in 1977. So I was sad because he was like, he just reminded me of a nice grandpa because I was a kid. What did I know? So yeah, I can't imagine children having that feeling about Trump. I don't know. I don't know a lot of kids that I can discuss. All the children I know are in middle school or higher or babies. So I don't have any kids to pick. Now I want to go out and just interview some children on what they think. I'm curious. But I've never thought about that. Yeah, about the people growing up and this is what's being normalized and how that's going to shape them in the future. I think that a lot of that has to do with how open their parents are with discussing politics in front of them and around them.
Yeah. We had a pretty robust, I grew up in Central Texas in a military household. My father was in the Air Force. And so my mother was of that same mindset. And growing up, I was the liberal person, but my mother we had long, passionate, open conversations about politics. She was always incredibly open to that. Now in my household, I am the left leaning to my right leaning children. I'm not sure exactly how that happened, but we continue to have super open, long discussions, passionate discussions about, the politics of the day. I think that's my responsibility, candidly, as a parent.
Yeah, I found some interesting things in looking at the voter data of Kansas, the District 81 where Caden Bennett is running. But because he wanted me to give him a list of the mixed households for him to go knock those doors himself. Because we had people that were like, I only want to knock Democrats' doors, or I'll do Democrat and unaffiliated, but I don't want to talk to Republicans. Or that's been a concern because they're afraid they just can't deal with confrontation, right? So they want to avoid the confrontation if they can. And I get it. But I'm running, I'll knock any door, I'll talk to anybody. And so it was really interesting to see just how many households there were that were mixed. And the majority of the thing that made them mixed was because they had a young adult living with them. Because that's happening more and more and more now, that young adults are staying with their parents longer. And then what I noticed the trend was that those young adults were mostly unaffiliated. So we have no idea if they're right or left or what they are. And then a majority of his district is 40% of his district is unaffiliated. Which is about where Kansas now. They just came out, when they came out with the newest numbers in Kansas, Democrats went down a little, Republicans went down a lot, and then unaffiliated went up a lot. And unaffiliated voters are the key to flipping any seat in Kansas.
Yeah, certainly a large voting bloc and a group that candidly we were actively looking to appeal to.
And I think that's the mistake a lot of campaigns are making up and down the ballot, right? And I think that's the key to flipping. I feel like a lot of them are focusing on, Democrats and then Republicans, and then it's a lot easier to get an unaffiliated to come vote for you in the general than it is to flip a Republican to vote for you. And so I feel like there's so many people trying to appeal to both sides that they're completely ignoring the middle, and which is crazy, because to appeal to both sides, what they're trying to stay somewhere in the middle. But unaffiliated really isn't the middle to me. I feel like you have Democrats, you have Republicans, you have the middle of those two, and then you have unaffiliated. They're just wild cards. They care enough to register to vote. They care enough to come out and vote, to register to vote, which means they care enough to come out and vote. So if they're not coming out to vote, it's because you're not giving them anyone to vote for.
Agreed. And I think maybe they're single issue voters. And I can't speak to what's important to everybody. I can just say what's important to me and then be very clear on kind of where I stand. And that will appeal to some folks and not appeal to some folks, I know.
Yeah. And this is what I've told my candidates and stuff too, is that at the end of the day, what should I say about this, or what should I say about that? I'm like, I don't know. What do you think about that? You know what I mean?
How do you believe?
What do you believe? Whatever that is. And if some people don't like it, you can't make everybody happy. And if you try to water down your message so much that it just keeps everybody happy, it becomes just another noise. It just becomes more noise.
Yes, inauthentic. Yeah, I agree. I think Trey, God bless him, has tried to steer me to not being too outspoken about things that might inflame people. But candidly, I'm at a point in my life where, and frankly, I think we feel pretty strongly on similar issues.